My name is Jorge Mejia, and I'll be talking about one subject of the class, eating theories, that I found really interesting and it really changed the way I see food from now on. This subject is the one about manners and food. In class, we saw how eating is a social act. It depends, the way we behave while we are eating depends of where we are, with whom we are eating with, or in which country from which culture we are. So, for example, if we are eating with our friends or our family in a dinner in a table, it's a bad manner to eat it with your hands. While if you're in a bar and in a sports bar, you're drinking with your friends, and you can order a cheeseburger, you can order fries, nachos, or chicken wings, hot wings, and you can eat it with your hand, and it's not considered an offense or is not considered unpolite. And this can happen inside the same country. For example, another example, if you're in a coffee shop. If you're in a coffee shop, you can be there by yourself, eating a bagel, having a coffee, or eating a sandwich and with your iPad or your computer, your headphones on, or reading a book, and you can be working and or doing some homework by yourself in a coffee shop, and it's considered normal. It's not considered bad or unpolite or rude. While if you're in a bar, or especially if you are with your family in a dinner and you're eating and you have your headphones on, or you have your computer, your phone, a book, and you're doing something else instead of talking to everyone else in the table, is considered a really bad manner. So you should never do this. And the way we behave, it depends on where we are. It also, as we saw in class, it also depends on our gender, or our age, and our culture, or where we are from. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about especially the manners around the world and the differences between what is a good manner and a bad manner, depending on the country you are. This is what it really impact me and changed the way I see food, more than the gender or the or age, especially from where we are. As we saw in class, we saw a video and some examples about what are good manners and what are bad manners in different countries. I did some extra research, and I found some differences really interesting, some that we have already seen in class, and others that I found new personally that I found really interesting. First example is in Europe, especially in France and in Russia, but in general in Europe. You should never put your hands on the table under the table. You should always rest your wrists on the table. Never put the hands under, because some researchers have said that this might be because in the past people used to hide guns under the table. So this is a way to show that you're not hiding anything, you're not hiding a gun. So you should always, at all time in a table, rest your wrists on the table. Never your elbow, just your wrists on the table, and never put your hands under it. Another example is in Hungary. You should never cheers or clink the glasses with beer, or with beer glasses, because um, historically they say that in 1948 the Hungarian Revolution was defeated, and the victors, that were the Austrians, they celebrated by toasting beer glasses. Since then, the Hungarians prohibited to toast with beer. So this is something that happened in 1848, and it still is a bad manner to toast with beer in Hungary. You can do it with another kind of glass, another drink, with a cup or another drink. You can cheers. But if you're drinking beer, you should never clink your glass. It's considered a really bad manner. Also, there are some other examples. For example, Thailand. I found that in this country, the cutlery was just introduced about 200 years ago, and before that, people ate with their hands. But when cutlery was introduced, they decided that the way to use it is that the fork, you only use the fork to push the food onto a spoon. So it's just a help, and you should never use it to transfer the food from the plate to your mouth. So you only use the fork to put the food inside the spoon, and the spoon is the one that reaches your mouth with the food. That is something, if we compare it, something like the way we use the fork. We use the fork to cut and to also push the food inside the fork and to transfer the fork in with the food inside our mouth. They decided it to be different, so the way they use the fork is just as a utensil, as a help, never to transfer food to your mouth. Another example that we already saw in the video and is really common for everyone is that in Muslim countries, especially in the Middle East, um, you should never use your left hand to eat. You should never do it because in these countries, the left hand is traditionally used for maintaining your body hygiene. So this hand is considered unclean. So you should never use it when you're eating. You should only use your right hand. Also, another interesting example that I found is in France. In this country, you should never offer to split the bill. Rather, you offer to pay for the whole bill, the full bill, or someone else is going to pay the full bill. Because in this country, to offer to split the bill is considered unsophisticated and it's a bad manner. You should never do it. Rather, you pay the whole bill or someone else does, but you should never offer to split. Another example that I also found really interesting is in Italy. In Italy, you should never put extra cheese on top of your food, especially on pizza or on seafood. It's considered there almost a sin to put extra cheese on top of pizza or seafood. They say that it's even worse on seafood. So if you're in Italy and you're in a table, you should never ask for extra cheese if it's not explicitly offered to you. I found this really interesting because personally, I sometimes like to put some some cheese, some extra cheese on top of the already cooked pizza, especially Parmesan cheese. But in this country, they found that really offensive and a really bad manner. So you should never do it. Another example is in Portugal. In this country, if the salt and pepper are not already on the table, you should never ask for them. In this country, this is a really bad manner because it's considered an offense because you're almost saying that the chef's seasoning skills are not good enough for you. So you're asking for more seasoning. If the pepper and the salt are not already on the table, you should never ask for extra salt and pepper. It's considered an offense to the chef. Another example is in the country of Ethiopia. Um, First, they never use single plates. This means that you never have a plate with food for just yourself. There's only one single big plate with lots of food in the middle of the table. So they share, they all share from the same plate. Also, they never use cutlery. They just use their hands to eat. They also, I found that they also have another tradition that is called korsha. This is when they're in a table and someone is hand feeding, is taking food with their hands and feeding another person. For them, this is a gesture of hospitality because it builds trust and create bonds between these two persons. So it's a way they show affection and hospitality. I found this really interesting because, for example, in some parts and some cultures inside India, they consider that when the food touches your plate is instant instantly contaminated. So you should be the only one that eats from that food in your plate. You should never offer anyone else from your plate. It's considered a really bad manner, and is the whole opposite that in India and Ethiopia this custom. So I found it really interesting the way they see um, the food and the way they share food. A last example that I found is in general East and South Asia. Here in these countries, things are a little bit more complicated. I found that all their customs and a lot of them are almost the exact opposite that in our country, Colombia, are and in general in our culture. For example, first, for them, especially in Japan and China, slurping the noodles and in general making no noise while you are eating is considered a compliment because it shows appreciation for the meal you were given. It shows that you like it and you are enjoying it. This is the whole opposite that in our country. If you here in Colombia you make noise while you are eating, it's considered a bad manner and is considered disgusting and gross. Also, in East and South Asia, if you in these countries, you should never finish everything on your plate. You should always leave a small portion of it and don't eat it because for these countries, if you finish everything on your plate, it's considered an offense. It means that the hosts didn't feed you enough and you're still hungry and what they give you is not good, is not enough for you. So you're not satisfied. Some researchers say that if you're in one of these countries and you eat the whole food in your plate, they'll they'll give you more and more until you're satisfied, and they'll feel bad because what they give you is not enough for you. So you should never finish the whole food in your plate. So as I've shown, there are a lot of differences in the way we eat here in our country, in our culture, and the way other cultures eat. Before, for me, I just saw food as food. I just saw Chinese food as just Chinese food, Indian food as just Indian food. And I'll take a fork, I'll take a knife or a spoon, and I'll just eat it the way I know how to eat it. But I'll never thought I'll never think about what it represents. Now, when I think about different cultures, food, and Chinese, Indian, Arabic, or Russian, or Hungarian food, I'll think about the culture that is behind that food. How am I supposed to eat it? How, if I should use my hands, or if I should use cutlery, or if I should eat the whole plate, or eat the whole food in my plate, or maybe leave a little bit. For example, in some countries, I found that having a second and a third plate is actually a really good manner. It shows that you really like their food and you want more, and they really appreciate this gesture. But in some others, it's a really bad manner, and you should never ask for extra food. For example, also in Chile, you should never touch the food, not even pizza or a hamburger. So now that I think of this, I think about how should I eat it. I now think of, if I'm going to travel to a different place, I'm going to be curious and I'm going to be interested on the way they eat and how am I supposed to eat so I'm not unpolite for them. So this was a really interesting subject that it really changed the way I see food. Now I'll see food not just as food. I'll see food as a culture, as something more than just something that fits me, but something that it represents something else. And also when I travel, I'll be more I'll be more interested in this, and I think I'll do my research before going into a place and eating, and I might be insulting somebody else, and I don't even know it. So I found this really interesting. It really changed the way I see food, and it's something that everyone should know. Everyone should know how to eat it and what to eat and where to eat it, because it's important to be polite everywhere we go and to know how to express our appreciation for the food. And this is it. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you see the way food the way I see it now, and you also get interested on the way you should eat and how to be polite. Thank you.